Say hello, nerds.
Hi, nerds.
Yeah. Who are you supporting for president?
Andrew Yang.
Do you want to tell people? Do you want to tell people about our dinner, or do you want me to do it?
You tell them.
Okay. We had a very intense Christmas dinner at the Nerds for Yang family last night. And it was intense because half of the Nerds for Yang extended family is MAGA. And so I decided I was not going to I was not going to discuss politics at this dinner. No politics over Christmas. But I was sitting next to one of my MAGA family members, and he brought up some political topics, and you know what happens. I mean, it takes great self-control not to engage in a political discussion in 2019 with the impeachment and the primaries and obviously the election coming up now less than a year, 11 months from now. And so I think MAGA family member was saying, I think it started with something quite innocuous, which was like, I love how they always refer like your candidate. One of my MAGA family members always says, your candidate, da, 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 da. They, for some reason, don't want to say his name. I'm not sure why. But anyway, they're like, well, your candidate wants to give money to poor people and they're not going to want to work. And then another MAGA member said, that's communism. And I said, I was at a fork in the road. I was like, do I engage? I was like Maverick. I don't know. I was too rushed. I was like, should I engage or not? And but I said, fuck it. Oh, excuse me. Brandon's in the room. Sorry, Brandon. I'll pay you later. I said, screw it. Engage, Maverick. So I said, actually, this idea was also proposed by Milton Friedman, who is a very famous Republican-leaning economist, a conservative. And he called it the negative income tax. And they said, kind of suspiciously, just like didn't reply. I think it's basically the comment of like they don't know if something's true or not. They probably haven't done a ton of research. And then I said, you could think of it as a negative income tax. It's not common ownership of the means of production. It's not even excessive regulation of the private sector. It's just distributing taxes that are collected from a value-added tax to every citizen equally. And then one MAGA member said, then people are not going to work. They're going to become, I think they didn't use the term, but I'm pretty sure they were thinking of the term welfare queens, because these are hardcore Reagan supporters as well. And I said, the data suggests that that's not true. You don't see in Alaska massive unemployment because people are getting a oil check. You see people work around the same amount. And then there are other studies that show that the only impact on people's likelihood of working are like new mothers or people going to school. And then one of the MAGA members said something very striking to me. This MAGA member said, I said, so I can send you that data if you want. I can send you the studies. And the MAGA member said, no, you don't need to send me that data. I won't look at it. And the other MAGA member said, this is all fake news. That was the beginning of the dinner. I think around that time we were working on our salads. So this is still very early into the dinner. Then of course, what came up was the current president, the good old Donald Trump. And I think, then at one point we were talking about Trump, and they were saying, do you think your candidate will even get the nomination? Again, like, I don't know why they won't say his name. They're like freaking MSNBC in some ways. So then I was like, to be honest, like, Biden is actually polling the best right now. So based on that data, he is most likely to be given the nomination. And they said, oh, ha, 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 Sleepy Joe. And then I said, wait, hold up. Because I was here with the nerdlings for Yang, Ryan and Brandon. And I said, Ryan and Brandon, I want to be very clear that even when we disagree with people, when we're talking about politics, we should really refrain from bullying people or name calling or marginalizing people based on sort of insults to their appearance or how they come across. And so we're not going to engage in that. And because unfortunately, Ryan and Brandon started calling Trump names, which were, they were entertaining. But I felt like I don't want to raise kids who basically grow up just insulting the other side. Now, we're going to slip from time to time. I've caught myself saying some unpleasant things about Trump. But at this dinner conversation, I said, hey, I don't want this dinner conversation to kind of swirl into just name calling. I didn't want to degrade the conversation. I wanted to really have a thoughtful conversation. Devolve. Yes. Read my mind, R. McLuhan. I didn't want it to devolve. So, then there was a slight pause, and then they said, whatever happens, we're gonna overcome this witch hunt. And then I said, oh, witch hunt. And I thought to myself, I don't know if I should engage in this conversation about the impeachment, because I'm pretty sure I'm not going to change their mind. And I'm pretty sure it's not going to end up well. But I had to. I could not let that just lay there. So I took a deep breath and I was like, witch hunt. But you do agree that foreign powers should not interfere with our democratic process. Like, wouldn't we agree on that? And of course they said, what are you talking about? Like, there is no foreign intervention. And this whole impeachment thing is just a farce. It's a coup. It's a travesty. It's a disgrace. Basically, I felt like I was reading Donald J. Trump's Twitter feed. And I said, well, don't you think it's inappropriate for the president to ask another country to help him do political opposition research in exchange for $500 million in defense aid that's been approved by Congress? Especially defense aid that is meant to assist with repelling an adversary, the former Soviet Union, which I know you Republicans consider very dangerous. You can tell I was already getting fired up. And then they said, one MAGA, the most hardcore, he said he was just investigating corruption. The president of the United States is the chief law enforcement officer. He has a obligation to defend the Constitution and investigate corruption. Why should we be giving money to these foreign countries? And I said, you are absolutely right. The president to root out corruption wherever it may lie, and especially if U.S. foreign dollars are going to the same country that will benefit from this aid. But I also said, clearly, there was. Do you think it was a coincidence that of all the potential corrupt companies that President Trump could focus on, why do you think he focused on the one where Joe Biden's son was on the board of directors? Like, is that the only corrupt? Was that like the most corrupt company in all of the world? I mean, we give aid to a lot of places. We're currently giving more aid to Israel than Ukraine, and the current leader of Israel is under all kinds of investigations, which he claims is a witch hunt too. But you know, that is what it is. And so they said, the most extreme MAGA said to me, it was just corruption, Tom. That's all it is. You're reading into it. I was like, no, wait a minute. You think can we at least agree that it is to President Trump's political advantage to have the Bidens under investigation? And then he said, no, it was just about corruption. And I was like, okay. That was a point in the conversation where I realized, like, there's just no way that, let's just call him MAGA 1, is going to relent. Like, if he can't even agree that dragging the Bidens through the mud and requiring the prime minister of the Ukraine to do a press conference announcing an investigation into the Biden family is not helpful to Trump, like, it's just very hard to have a dialogue. Then MAGA 2 came around. Meanwhile, the rest of the table was very quiet. I think it it was a little tense. It was a little tense, I'll admit. So at this point, we're into the main course, and we're talking about the impeachment. And I said to MAGA 2, well, if you don't think the president did anything wrong, why won't he have why won't he have Bolton, Pompeo, and Giuliani testify and explain what they were doing? Because isn't that like what they were complaining about the whole time that Pelosi and the House were in the impeachment inquiry, that they didn't have a chance to talk? So now it's in the Senate, which are controlled by the Republicans, which Mitch McConnell has agreed is being coordinated with the White House hand in glove. So now's your chance. And MAGA 2 said, no. You can't force people to testify. If John Bolton doesn't want to testify, that's his own choice. And I said, well, no, hold on now. I said, it's not his choice. He has been instructed by the White House, and all of those witnesses have been instructed by the White House not to cooperate. This was apparently news to MAGA 2, because MAGA 2 is like, no, I don't think that's true. I was like, no, the White House told them that they should not cooperate with the impeachment inquiry and they should not be witnesses. There's literally a court case now trying to figure out if the legislative branch has a right to request and subpoena witnesses from the executive branch in impeachment inquiries. And MAGA 2 is like, I don't think that's true. And I said, look, I can send you the press clippings that indicate that the White House has instructed Pompeo and Bolton to stand down and to not cooperate. And I said, do you want me to send? I can email them to you. And MAGA 2 said, no, you don't need to email that to me. Which is another one of those moments where I was like, wow, there's just no way that they will we can't even agree on the facts, no less the logic. And then the other, and so I said, now this is where maybe I was sort of getting a little fired up. So I said, let me just be really clear. You're mad because the House didn't call any Republican witnesses. And then MAGA2 said, yeah, and also the White House lawyers were not allowed. It was a sham. I said, okay, so you're mad about that. You didn't have a voice. You weren't able to call your witnesses. You weren't able to have your lawyers. And I said, but now ball's in the Senate's court. You call as many witnesses as you want. You bring as many lawyers as you want. McConnell and the White House are working together as one team. So why won't you have them there? And then MAGA2, gotta give her credit. She's smart. She threw two little hand grenades into the argument. Technicalities, but I have to give her credit. She's sharp. She said, well, Tom, there's no point in talking about this. No point in talking about it because Nancy Pelosi won't even send the articles of impeachment to the Senate. So who knows what's going to happen? Maybe he won't even be impeached. And I said, wait a minute, because Pelosi is sitting on the articles of impeachment, you can't tell me whether it's right that the Senate should hear witnesses or not. Why does that have anything to do with the other thing? Like, if you want a fair trial, then have a fair trial. The articles of impeachment are published. Everybody can read them. Have you read them? Of course, she said no. But she says, but I've heard enough about them because she does have a news channel on pretty much 24/7 by the name of Fox News. And I said, okay, so she said, number one, Pelosi is not releasing the articles of impeachment to the Senate, so who knows what's going to happen. And number two, we can't judge what the Senate will do. Let's just, she said this, I'll never forget. She said this phrase to me that sounds so familiar. She said, we'll just have to see what happens, Tom. We'll just have to see what happens. And I was like, oh my God, really? So we've devolved into whataboutism. Who knows? I don't believe your facts. They're fake. Let's just see what happens. And you're all communists and you're all traitors. So that was, Brandon, was that a good summary of our Christmas dinner? Woo! My God. And then at that point, like, we were ready for dessert, but no one really was eating a lot. Mrs. Nerds for Yang, she managed to retain her a little room for dessert. So I think she partook. I didn't even have a single bite of dessert because I was so frustrated because I basically felt like, wow, this is the state of our country right now, that we can't even argue about stuff we disagree over because we can't agree on a common set of facts. The facts were, and this is not opinion like, oh, was Trump, doing bad things or not. We couldn't even agree on whether Trump had instructed witnesses not to cooperate. We could not agree on whether the Senate should hear any witnesses. And we could not agree on whether the oil check in Alaska leads to unemployment or not. These are verifiable things that aren't really up for debate. They're not like, oh, well, my opinion is that Trump did or didn't instruct. I mean, this has been widely reported. Whether the Senate should have witnesses or not, like, that's a decision that the Senate has to make. And let's just see what happens is not a way to have a debate. But maybe they weren't really interested in having a debate.